without any ado, we'll start, and we will start with number 1, Judy Martin. Thank you.
Thank you, and good evening to everybody and to fellow candidates, and thanks again for Roy, who is going to chair this second Hustings for St Helier No.1. 25 years ago, I got a phone call from Alan Brecon because I'd been a bit noisy in the Estates Tenants group. We'd discovered that the estate that I lived on was going to be refurbished, but they had done 20 housing and they'd run out of money. So I got my 2 young children, put them in a buggy, and I went round and got 60 houses to sign a petition. The next morning, and I sent it off to the media, the next morning I had Terry Leman, Corrie Stein, and one other who I can't remember now, knocking on my door saying I was a troublemaker. So this carried on for 5 years, making some trouble for the States members and helping other States members like Jerry Dorry get into the States, and Ted Vibert in 1999. Unfortunately, by January, Ted was quite ill and he had to stand down. So again, I got the phone call, quite a few people, Paul Leclerc, Jennifer Bridge, Alan Brecon, come on, Judy, you really can do it this time. I said, yeah, okay, I've still got 2 young children and a teenager, but I will have a go. And I would have liked to have waited a few extra years, but I thought it would give me the experience to stand, and I knew that people knew me, and I knew the area. I'd been around the area twice, as I say, with Jerry Dorry and Ted Vibert. So I was elected all them years ago in here, and I think it was on the 3rd of May, so we're nearly there. And I was sworn in on the 5th of May, and my first sitting was the 9th of May, the first day they ever sat on Liberation. And from then on, I've been a thorn in the side to a lot of establishment members. But it's taken me a lot of time and a lot of hard work to gain some respect. I've won some very important debates. I've won disability rights for children back into their own right. They used to get it before, but when income support came in, they took it away. And they were reintroducing it for level 3, and I took an amendment. I actually was the Assistant Minister at Health, and I took an amendment against the Social Security Minister. I won that debate, and they say politics is the art of the possible. I took the debate for £500,000 for disabled children, the debate after they'd given away millions for Clement. So I think that was sort of fortuitous as well. And then I was told we might not be able to get the money. But we did get the money, and it was introduced this term, so all the children get it. I've been fighting for better housing in our district and fighting against overcrowding in our district. We've won some, we've got the town park extended, but we lost La Colette. They're going to put 153 homes where there was 50, which is very disappointing. But we have won money for a proper study of the whole area, half the par. We want to give it back its seaside feel. We want people to come and visit half the par. We want to not be the poor relation of the waterfront, which is another part of the district that I do represent. But I know there's lots of money spent down the waterfront, and half the par has become the poor relation. So I think I've got a track record, and as I said at the last Hustings, I will not be changing. If you vote for me on May the 16th, you will get more of the same. And if you don't like what I've been doing for the last 18 years and before, then obviously I won't get your vote. But hopefully I will do. Thank you.
Good evening. I'll just let Nick take his seat first. Good evening. The position of office of deputy carries tremendous responsibility, and I'm here for a job interview. You are the employer. You need to assess me, not necessarily on having all the experience, and you can't expect me to come up with all the answers. Your assessment needs to look at my potential. Will I demonstrate a balanced approach to each and every policy? Do I have transferable skills and qualifications to take on such a role? Have I any idea about business and accountability? Am I mature enough to manage the responsibility of government? Well, I've run my own small business for 19 years. I've gained various qualifications, including bookkeeping and accountancy, and my age should speak for itself. Also, a number of years ago, I undertook a careers evaluation to see areas of my potential direction. The number one result turned out to be actuary. I didn't even know what it did. So when I looked into it, I found the role was someone who formulates policy assessing risks and premiums. It's actually associated with insurance. However, government is not that much different, with risks, the services it provides, and the premiums in the form of taxation. What is clear is the person has to demonstrate a balanced approach towards how policy is applied. For example, if I were to ask you, how many of you would support free university fees, versus how many would you give me £1,000 for me to, out of your own pocket, for me to buy a new digger for my commercial business? University is not a guarantee of success, but it is a commercial asset to the person. Therefore, both of these identify a vocational asset, i.e. university for the person to earn a living, and the digger for me to earn a living. Just because a person doesn't go to university shouldn't mean they are deprived of an equal opportunity. In your life, you work at a job to earn monies so that you can buy the things you desire. The government is you. It's doing a job. It wants to buy things, public and essential services, infrastructure, administration, etc. How's it going to pay for its desires? It needs income, just like you do. We know taxation is the government's income, but that taxation is for the provisions of the whole community. It needs careful management. It can't be squandered on frivolous extravagances. It's the people's money and requires appropriate distribution. You can't apply random policies to the whole community, and you can't expect taxpayers to subsidise the elite few. True change is needed where all of society is included. Making promises of policies that can't be delivered, I will not do. I will only make one promise, and that is to serve you with integrity and accountability, with my policies being sensible, balanced, and sustainable. I've already moved the earth. That's easy. But to move your world, I need your help. I'm standing to be your speaker, not your ruler. You also need to participate for true democracy. Our island's future hinges on your decisions as the electorate. On May the 16th, make your voice heard and vote for new independent accountability for a balanced future. Thank you.
My name is Jan Mash. I'm standing as a Reform Jersey candidate. I'm currently a mature student at Highlands College, and I've been studying media for the past 2 years. Before that, I was working full-time in a low-wage job. I have always been in some form of employment since the age of 16, with my last part-time job being in the tax office. Coming from a low-income background and living in social housing all my life, I'm fully aware of the difficult decisions that were made by the states. Decisions that were not difficult for those who voted for them, but were difficult for ordinary working families. As a mature student at Highlands College, I am more than aware of the cutbacks in education and the hurdles people have to go through to either retrain or re-enter education. I am running because I, like the majority who sit at home on election day, feel that the electoral system and the so-called independents have failed us. Despite the tough talk last election, too many homes on this island are still damp, dirty and cold. Food bank use is at its highest ever. Rent poverty is at its highest ever. In-work poverty is at its highest ever. Too many people are either on 0 hours contracts or are working 2, sometimes 3 jobs to make ends meet. Too many sole traders and business owners are going into debt, and the squeezed expenditure on incomes felt by lower and middle income earners is only making that problem worse. More and more of the so-called middle class have seen their incomes decline, leaving them in the impossible situation of being asset rich but income poor. If the trends of declining living standards carry on, it will be my generation who lose out the most. None of the issues I've listed were inevitable or acts of God. They came about because unaccountable politicians who claim to be for change at election time do nothing after they're elected. I'm running because this needs to change. The first hurdle to change is to turn our unaccountable, independent political system into a party political system, to change from a system of random people saying random things into a system where there are clear, coherent choices come election time. You may not know me as a personality, but because I'm a part of a political party, you know what I'm standing for. No individual knows all the answers, and they are rarely ineffective in achieving change on their own on the big issues. I'm a member of a team made up of sitting deputies, teachers, finance workers, small business owners, students, nurses, support workers, single mothers, and shop workers. Because of this, if we are elected as a party into the states, we can bring unique perspectives to the states when debating and voting on the big issues. My pledges to you are those of every Reform Jersey candidate here tonight. I'm pledging to start in drop-in constituency surgeries, reduce the cost of GP visits for pensioners and low-income families, introduce an empty property tax and freeze social rents, reduce social security contributions for the self-employed, reform our tax system so everyone pays their fair share. Those are only a few pledges from Reform Jersey's 10 key manifesto pledges. We can't achieve our pledges unless we have a team in the Assembly. Don't just vote for me, vote for the team. Vote for Reform Jersey to Reform Jersey on May the 16th. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm John McNichol, standing as part of Reform Jersey. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe we need a truly representative assembly that reflects a true cross-section of our community. People from all backgrounds and all social classes. Traditionally, wealth and privilege have been well represented in Jersey politics. Some might say it's been overrepresented. So it's time to redress that balance. I come from a solidly working class background. I served for 6 years in the armed forces in the army, including 3 operational tours of duty, 2 in Northern Ireland and 1 with the United Nations. And there, I learned the value of teamwork, tenacity, determination, and the power of people coming together to achieve a shared objective. I arrived in Jersey 32 years ago, and I've worked in frontline services, both public transport and more extensively in health, working with some of Jersey's most vulnerable people. Ladies and gentlemen, I know what it takes to work hard for modest reward in challenging environments. I know what it means to live payday to payday and to struggle to pay bills. Life has become increasingly difficult for many on the island over the last number of years, with real hardship taking hold. We need to act, and we need to act decisively. We must address the scourge of low pay, insecure work, and crippling housing costs. And I intend to make that my focus. We need to ensure that people are paid enough to live on, that they have agency in their own lives, and they can plan their families and their futures. Enough with below cost of living pay awards dressed up as pay rises for hard-pressed nurses, teachers, and public sector workers. Reform Jersey has a blueprint for real change. It's not a wish list. It's a set of policies that will give us an economy that works for everyone. If elected, I will work tirelessly to implement those policies laid out in our manifesto. Ladies and gentlemen, for the first time in a long, long time, we have a real choice. Let's not squander it. Please consider voting for me and my Reform Jersey colleagues on the 16th of May. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening, and thank you for taking the time to be here tonight. My name is Scott Wickenden. I've been honoured to serve as your Deputy of St Helier District 1 for the last 3.5 years alongside Deputy Judy Martin and Deputy Russell Labby. I'm a man who's not afraid of taking on responsibility and making hard decisions, which I feel I've evidenced in my performance as your Deputy these last 3 years. Since the last election, I've undertaken many roles and responsibilities. I was formerly the Vice Chairman of the Public Accounts Committee. I was given ministerial responsibility for the e-government programme and the Jersey digital sector. I am currently a member of the Planning Committee, the Privileges and Procedures Committee, the Jersey Police Authority, and I'm Chairman of the Ecology Trust Fund. I, with Deputies Labby and Martin, have campaigned against overdevelopment of La Collette and Gas Place. We have fought alongside Constable Simon Crowcroft to get States of Jersey to pay parish rates, which allowed us to fund the Half Par Village Improvement Plan and other needed St Helier projects. I've won 3 private members' propositions. I've overturned the proposed 400% increase in the planning inquiry fees to ensure that the fees remained affordable for all islanders. I made it a requirement for the Council of Ministers to put a statement of collective responsibility on all propositions, thus increasing transparency in the way that they work. And the States Assembly agreed to my proposition to create an e-petitioning system. This will be in place for the next Assembly and will make it easier for you to have your voice heard and the issues you care about debated in the States Chamber. So I challenge the candidates that say independents cannot achieve change in this Assembly. With so many sitting States members not standing for re-election, we are losing a combined 214 years of experience in the Assembly. Jersey more than ever needs politicians that are experienced, willing to step up and take responsibility to make the hard decisions, not just shout from the sidelines. St Helier was given priority within the Council of Ministers' 2000 strategic plan. However, that's all that happened. If re-elected, I will propose a fund is created in the next medium-term financial plan, specifically for future St Helier projects. Too many times over the last term, St Helier residents have been let down due to funds in the Strategic Reserve having been pre-allocated. We do not know how St Helier's built environment will change over the next 4 years, so it's important to have the funds ready for the changes you would like in the future in St Helier. If re-elected, I would like to continue my work I've started in digitising the government services so you can access state services when you want, from where you want, without having to queue in the departments, while at the same time creating efficiencies and the savings in providing these services. I will also continue to do my work alongside Digital Jersey to grow our digital economy, in skilling and reskilling residents, encouraging new digital businesses and promoting our island. Please consider Labby, Martin and Wickenden when you go to vote on the 16th of May.
Good evening, everyone. As Winston Churchill once said, there is nothing wrong with change if it is in the right direction. Think back 4 years ago. Only 29% of St Helier residents came out to vote. Now imagine if that number was 60, 70 or even 80%. What would the last 4 years of Jersey have looked like? Imagine if everybody who wrote a post on social media about their recent struggles due to the current government came out and voted for positive change. Now stop imagining, because not only is this opportunity real, but it is possible. As a Jersey local, I'm very proud of my island. I'm proud to have lived here for 26 years, gone to school here, and worked in a multitude of different sectors in Jersey. I'm a proud townie, living in St Helier all my life, and declaring that St Helier is the best parish amongst the rest of them. When I travel overseas and being asked if I hail from New Jersey, I'm proud to tell them the history of our island, and always say that the original is 10 times better than the sequel. However, over recent years, when talking with family and friends, I've found it more and more difficult to come to the defense of Jersey's government. When talking about equality, diversity, policies and law changes, it's getting harder to defend our island with the decisions that are being made by its government. Therefore, I'm standing for deputy. For the last few years, I've read the headlines about our island: increasing house prices, snowballing taxes for locals, and taxpayers' money being wastefully spent, even further distrust in the local government from the public. The states needs to sit up and listen to what you have been shouting from day one: more equality, better affordable housing, fairer taxation, free university tuition, an increase in minimum wage, and I could go on, but I only have 4 minutes to speak. As someone who has lived and worked in Jersey and been politically motivated in all my decision-making, I feel that now is the perfect time for someone like me to represent you in the State's Chamber. I'm someone that has lived through the increased hardships that have been created by our current government. I've had my tax increased to an unreasonable amount. I was unable to attend university because of the lack of funding. I have worked in minimum wage jobs and still try to save. I've had my rent increased. And due to the high cost of living over here, I'm finding it more and more impossible to save for the increasing deposit for a one-bedroom flat over here. I know how it feels to get up in the morning and feel like you have fallen into the finance industry, because if you follow your passion, there is no way you will be able to save for a deposit. I know how it feels to go home every night to another bill on the doorstep and figure out how you're supposed to budget for emergencies as well as live comfortably. What I don't know is why we have been made to live this way. Let me be your voice in the State's Chamber and come to the polling stations on the 16th of May to vote not only for me, but all of the Reform Jersey candidates you see here. And please remember, there is nothing wrong with change if it is in the right direction. Thank you so much for coming out tonight.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Russell Labby. I think this is the most important election for decades because it's crunch time for the island, it's crunch time for St Helier, in particular St Helier No.1. Why? Because it's home to the highest concentration of new housing developments by far. Now, there is nothing more important than people having a decent home to live in. And St Helier is playing its part in increasing supply, which is very important. But with that comes payback. As every urban planner will tell you, if you are putting more housing into an already densely populated area, that has to be accompanied by better amenities, improved amenities, more open space, more green space, more trees, better roads, better pavements, cycle paths. Fort Regent, a skate park. I just thought I'd get those in. Now, this isn't new. The government knows this, of course, too. And I think that's why, at the start of this last government, 3.5 years ago, they announced that St Helier would be one of their 4 main priorities. But it's difficult to see how that has manifested itself. It was a hollow promise, a con. We've seen nothing from government to regenerate St Helier. They also announced that they would launch the initiative Future St Helier. Again, thus far, it's delivered 0. Enter your deputies. And I suppose if you were to ask me how I would define, how I've been defined in my first time as your representative, my first term, I'd say it's through the campaigns we've fought. It's been one battle after another with this government to get improvements, to get less density. So much for St Helier being a priority. But we have made a start. Every campaign, every fight that I have fought, it's been alongside Deputy Martin and Deputy Wickenden. We have always fought. It just happened by accident, but that's how it grew. We have always supported one another. We've always fought shoulder to shoulder. Every single person in the administration of this island knows who the deputies of St Helier No.1 are. We've been that much of a nuisance. And we're laying the foundation. We're putting issues like open green space on the map. We're putting issues like density, appropriate density on the map, and improvements for the infrastructure of St Helier and village improvements. We're putting that on the map and we're starting to get somewhere. It's taking too long, but that is government's fault, and we've been fighting government. So it's interesting that Ports of Jersey, Andium Homes, have both come to the deputies Martin, Labby and Wickenden, now, after the La Collette thing. They come to us first when they've got a new development and ask us what we think and our opinions. It's almost as if we are the hurdle that they have to get over to progress their development further. And we don't hold back. Now, my primary message to you tonight is don't knock that hurdle down, because we are getting somewhere. And with determination, with the determination of your deputies working together as a team, we can deliver, and we will deliver. We know the states of Jersey is going to look very different. We know we are losing a lot of experience. This is why it's crunch time for the island too. You're electing a government for the next 4 years. That is a long time to get things wrong, to mess things up, if we don't get the choice right in this election. Thank you for listening.
I think it's my turn, and I come last. My apologies for coming a little late. I did so from the field directly to speak to you. A lot's been happening since we were together at the Ormeau Hotel. I've been out knocking on the door, campaigning and speaking to people. In fact, I've just come from 2 ladies who I spoke to in a garden, single parents. And I asked them what were the issues that were of great importance, maybe the reform of the States Assembly. No, that wasn't of great importance to them. But what did concern them was damp, because their children were asthmatic, and the windows, which didn't fit and let the wind in. That was what was important. And I said, have you spoken to your deputies? Deputies? What deputies? They'd never heard of them. Didn't have a clue. So I said to them, win or lose, I'll be back to help you with those issues, because those are the kind of things I deal with on a daily basis, helping working people to find problems to their issues. On Monday, I was in the employment tribunal representing a chef. He'd worked for a small hotel in St. Helier for a year. He'd clocked up 200 hours of overtime. And they were supposed to be given as time off in lieu, but he realized they were never going to give it to him. So he resigned, and he came to me, and we're fighting to get him about £2,000. On Monday, I got him £500. That was the beginning. Is everyone satisfied with this government we've got? Could you not better characterize it as just simply incompetent? I think you'd all agree it doesn't deliver. And that is why 70% of the electorate in this district does not vote. They do not trust the political class, and I'm afraid that government is going to remain. We've just had 11 unopposed constables come back in. We're just waiting for the senators to be crowned for our leadership. The policies aren't going to change. But if there is going to be change for working people, for the pensioners, for the vulnerable, then you're going to have strong individuals like myself who know how to challenge power, who are prepared, who will not roll over and have their tummies tickled. I'm a fighter. It comes with the territory of being a lawyer, and I want to be your representative for the working people. I've seen the poverty. 30% of pensioners live in poverty. We know that statistic. But when I speak to pensioners, as I have done, and I find a man who's sick, a former lorry driver, who tells me he lives on £40 per week, and if he goes to the doctor, it costs him £30, leaving him £10 per week. He has nothing left, not even bread. That is desperation. And he wasn't alone. Lots of mental health problems out there, particularly when you're canvassing during the day. So I'll come back and conclude. It's not just about electing our 3 wonderful, successful deputies who've achieved so much in this last period. You're going to have to elect people who want to fight for your social and economic interest in the next government. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick, and thank you all the candidates for so clearly and within time laying out their own beliefs. We'll now go to questions. As I said, it'll be 2 for 2 minutes. And please don't eat the mic. Keep a certain distance. So who would like to ask the first question? Yep. The gentleman at the back. Okay. This lady will look... Thank you very much. This lady will look after the mic. To the gentleman in the back. Just that, yeah.
Is that better? Hi.
Yeah. Could you give your name before you ask the question?
Yeah, sure. My name's Tim Bonner. I'm a resident of District Number 1, and I've been for 32 years. In those 32 years, I've consistently seen overdevelopment and overcrowding of St Helier alone. I hear a lot of you talking passionately about the overdevelopment and the overcrowding of this parish. But I've been monitoring the actual developments and the opposition, the appeals that are going in, and I don't see many names on them. So what I want to do, right, before I actually get to my question, I just want to state a few facts. Over the past few years in the current term of government, there have been developments, as we all know, at Ancourt, Roseville Street, Westmount, Horizon, JCG, La Colette, and that's given us a total of 1,234 residential units. That's not including the 520 residential units already approved for build in St Helier, or the 264 residential units that are now pending. That's almost 2,000 residential units in St Helier alone. I want to know what you are actively going to do about that going forward, and why people can't get on a property ladder if so many residential units are being built. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And a question from this side, perhaps. The gentleman in the corridor.
Hi, my name is Christian Robertshaw. I too live in this district. It's been mentioned by many of the candidates about the fact that increasing amounts of people are struggling to pay bills, even those in work, and that increasing amount of people are using food banks. This is a shameful situation in what is one of the world's richest islands. What will be the first thing that people do in order to help eliminate poverty if they are elected? Thank you.
Thank you for those 2 questions. Everybody catch the questions? Yeah. First question, and the gentleman can correct me if I've got it wrong, is about there's been a massive amount of development either occurred or was in the pipeline to take place. And what are you going to do about this incredible amount of development? Is that correct? That's correct. Yeah. Okay, Jason, if you'd like to kick off.
Well, good evening. Overcrowding. Well, I'm a resident of St Helier No.1 district. I live and breathe this district. I know what's going on here. It's the amount of construction sites that are going up around at the moment. We've got the Hotel Metropole, which we've got a load of accommodation coming there. There's going to be a lot of crowding. Just this week, I've been actually contacted by one of our district residents about accommodation in Lamott Street. There are a couple of offices there that are actually in the process of being converted. The applications are in at the moment, being converted into flats. I'm currently investigating that right this moment, and I'm in the process of putting an objection into it because it is not the appropriate kind of buildings to be converting into accommodation. It comes down to the road system, the sewer network, the other utility services that are needed. It's just far too much. And Lamott Street is a narrow street for access. Anyone who's been down there knows exactly what I'm talking about. The situation with the accommodation concerned, there is 0 parking being allocated onto these 2 sites, which is atrocious. My intentions is, yes, even before being elected, I'm actually going to be objecting for and on behalf of the district residents that I've spoken to already, and also for myself as well, because it's not very far from me. Looking at the other question, struggling to pay bills and using food banks, this is bad news, totally bad news. We are a very rich island. We've got the facility to be able to help people, and those in true need should get help, as opposed to the people who are just sponging the system should pay up. Thank you.
Jan?
With the first question, it's a combination of immigration. The current government has missed its target by over 300%, so that's over 1,000 people per year coming in, increasing demand. It also, dealing with it, is a combination of working together, of deputies working together, not just in St Helier No.1, but across town, which I think we at Reform Jersey are most well placed to do that. So we can try and stop the overdevelopment that's happening, not just in St Helier No.1. Okay, St Helier No.1 is feeling it most acutely, but it's happening across all of St Helier. And that actually ties back into electoral change, because at the end of the day, currently, the government, how the states are structured, means that the country parishes who don't want any development in their parishes are able to outvote the town deputies, so everything just gets lumped into St Helier, because at the end of the day, we don't have the political representation to say no. As for what you're going to help to do with poverty, well, the first thing that our party is pledging to do is reform the social security system and have a complete review. It hasn't been reviewed since it got incepted in 2008, and see about how effective it's working. We are going to cap or freeze even rents in the social sector, because currently they're going up at about £10 a week per 2-bedroom flat. If you're a minimum wage, you just can't afford that. And as for on the other side of it, in terms of working, we're going to implement regulations, the JAG guidelines on 0-hours contracts, and raise the minimum wage to £10 by 2020.
John?
Yeah, thanks, Tim. I guess your point is too much overdevelopment in the town. The town cramming, in fact, is what's actually happening. So what we need to do, and what one of our pledges are within Reform Jersey, is to utilise the 3,000 empty properties that are already that are lying empty on the island, and free them up so that they can be utilised for people to live in, like, you know. Also, we're going to, with all these offices moving out to the International Finance Centre, that's freeing up a lot of space within the town, all these old office buildings. Now, why can't they be converted into decent apartments and at social rents, at proper social rents, and have them ring-fenced and protected? So that's the sort of thing we'll be looking at there. With Christian, yeah, that's the raison d'etre of Reform Jersey. We're here to address poverty. You know, I call it the triple whammy of low pay, insecure work, and crippling housing costs. And, you know, we can't go on like this. It's creating massive inequality and massive social ills that come along with that. So we have within our manifesto, we have the policy to raise the minimum wage up to a living wage, to cap rents, and go away and do the work that will enable us to regulate the rental sector properly. And, of course, rid ourselves of the scourge of abusive 0-hours contracts. Thank you.
Scott?
Thank you, Tim and Christian, for your questions. I'm a big believer in preserving our countryside, so I do believe that St Helier does have a place in development, but it can't be cramming. We need to make sure that it's got open spaces and it's got the right amenities. It should be about community, not about cramming. I fought for this for La Collette, I fought for it in the Gas Place. I've also been involved with Andium on their North of Town plan that they're looking at to make sure that they've got amenities and things for communities within it. I sit on the planning committee at the moment, and I've massively fought against the overdevelopment of Dandara and Andium homes when they're trying to just cram in as many possible buildings, and I'll continue to do that. It's not always been an easy fight. I've been supported nicely by Deputy Martin and Deputy Labby, but I'll carry on fighting that fight if re-elected, as I have already. Christian, one of the things about poverty I've definitely fought, and I'm going to continue to fight if re-elected, is the rescindment of the retail tax. I was a co-signer of the proposition that was brought forward. That's putting an extra burden of £100 per household on this retail tax. And I think it's ridiculous that it was brought in at 20% without knowing the full consequences. There was no consultation by the Treasury Department, and it's really going to affect the poorest people in the island, so I will continue to fight that. Now, a comprehensive review of social security is happening right now, and being the experts, the people that see it day in and day out, I do want to know what happens on the outcome of that review, because that will let us know how we're going to deal with an ageing population and what we need to be doing, whether we raise contributions through social security, if we raise caps. But I do think that rather than a knee-jerk reaction, we need to know all of the facts, otherwise it can have massive long-term repercussions that will affect our children's children.
Kelly?
Tim, thank you so much for your question. Overcramming of St Helier is, especially District 1, is a major problem. The government set a net migration policy of 325 per year. And as my Reform Jersey colleague said, we are averaging about 1,000 per year. That definitely needs to be looked at, because most new individuals that come into Jersey funnel, unfortunately, into St Helier District 1, and this is where the overcramming is happening. What we need to look at is the targets that the government is setting must be followed. People must be held accountable to the targets that they set themselves. The new work permit scheme that's being looked at will prevent 500 to 700 registered workers graduating to, permanent residence after the 5 years. So that will help us with the overcramming of St Helier. We're also looking at, as a member of Jersey in Transition, I would appreciate more open space in St Helier, especially in District 1 as well. The Millennium Park is an absolutely great amenity for the area over there. We need more open space and more green areas, especially in St Helier District 1. Christian, obviously poverty is something that Reform Jersey is looking at. The average price of a one-bedroom flat at the moment is £235,000. That's not possible. Social housing is 90% of the market rate, and to assist that, reform, I've already been told not to say reform. We're looking at doing a rent freeze on social housing, introducing a living wage, and the best thing about electing us all in is that we'll work as a team. You know this. We're all singing from the same manifesto. We're going to all work together to do this. We have our key pledges. We're going to work together to fix these issues that you guys are all facing on a daily basis. Also, as well, Caritas Jersey, I'm going to be working hand in hand with them to look at eradicating poverty in Jersey. This is a real problem, and we need to fix it. Thank you.
Russell?
Tim, well, as you know, I took a proposition to the States to save the open green space on La Collette Low Rise because it's important, but also because that would have reduced the density of the development by quite a significant number. So that it was a double whammy. Now, they all thought I was mad. I took that to the States. I won the debate, and the government went ahead anyway, allowed Andium to go ahead with the planning. Now, I think that's shameful. And also, they gave their executives £40,000 and £30,000 pay rises. There you go. In truth, the La Collette fight started too late. Too much was done behind closed doors. So, one argument, we've lost a war there, but we've won an argument that in future, when development is started by a developer, they must go and meaningfully consult with residents and neighbours before, at stage one, before the plans are drawn up. And that has happened with Ann Street, and it's happening now. We fought the Gas Place battle. We won that one with the Tunnel Street residents, and Gas Place is going to be a smaller development, and they have now begun a new consultation process. When we start the consultation, I know it's tough. I know. It's frustrating, very frustrating, and it's my subject, and I've fought. But I'm not in the government, and I've come up against a brick wall. On poverty, we have got to do something. The next government has got to do something about addressing the high cost of living in the island. We don't have an Aldi, we don't have a Lidl. That's keeping prices artificially high. The cost of living is especially important for residents of St Helier No.1 on fixed incomes like pensioners, low wages we've seen wages stagnate, prices go up. We've got to do something to support and beef up the Consumer Council. They do excellent work. We have got to sort out the competition authority, which is failing, and we need a competition authority. Gas prices need to be looked at. They're unbelievably high, and some tenants have no choice but to pay them.
Christian Tim, the answers to your question can be combined because there's a problem here. Jersey is socially divided between the rich and the poor. Remember, the powerful, those who run this island, do not live in St Helier on the whole. They live out in those leafy green rural areas called the country parishes, and they're going to keep it that way. And they're going to put the housing for their super plan to enlarge this island. They're going to put it all in St Helier. That is their plan. There's going to be metropole hotels everywhere. New developments described by the developers as St Helier's most eclectic quarter. Was it? Is it? It used to be little pretty cottages, but it's not now. It's got this huge skyscraper. The TARDIS has landed. What will bring about change is and poverty can be addressed, because it's mainly to do with work poverty, is workers getting better and higher wages. We've got a very tight labour market. If we improved the laws relating to labour rights to give them more strength, got workers into unions, they would be able to demand higher pay, and that would start addressing the issue of poverty. There also needs to be, of course, a review of social security and the way that the poorest are dealt with, because their situation is very desperate. We could get rid of 0 hours contracts with legislative change. It needs a fight back by deputies in St Helier, which are underrepresented politically, because those rich and powerful out there control the country parishes. We need a reform of the State's Assembly, the electoral system, to give real weight. And we need those 70% who don't vote to engage, because we have to address them and their issues. Thank you.
Good, thank you. More questions, please? Oh, my apologies, Judy. Oh.
I was going to sit there.
Trying to get out of that one, weren't you?
No, I was going to say. Yeah, firstly, this time last year I was helping a couple get on the first-time buyers list, and the waiting list was 800 people. And it wasn't this time last year, it was July, August, and it's now 1,100 people. And these are mainly people who have been born here, lived here. And it does happen that people who vote in the States, like the block vote of the constables, they don't really mind that, they keep pushing immigration up. And it's never going to affect their parishes, because then when it comes to build, it's never not in my backyard. Unfortunately now they're screaming that their parishes are dying. But can we have little pockets here? But you can't have it both ways. in town, we do have a fight, and the cramming is the annoying thing. You can have some really fantastic designs and parks around, but they just have to have the extra 30 flats where they could also have some greenery and some places for people to sit and mingle and everything like that. So the fight is on, but I think that it is true that the country parishes always vote against the town. And everyone, the last island plan said put most of the new housing in town. We're going to have a new island plan in 2019, and it feels like 1919, sorry. And the food banks, social security need to review, but what I can't stand as well, I can't stand to see all this food that's dumped every night from supermarkets. And if some food can go to shelters and help and give them a boost with the staples, I'd rather see food go there than just go in the bin every single night. It's such a waste, and it's a criminal. Thank you.
Okay, we will take more questions. The gentleman in the front row here.
Mr. Chairman, candidates, ladies and gentlemen, my name's John Baker. I live at Castle Quay. Now, the bubble has burst, or is bursting, for the finance industry in Jersey. We've seen a shot across the bows this week. It's likely that sometime in the future, if we get a Labour government in, there's certainly going to be some imposition of some a stop to the secret way that the finance industry operates. Whilst I and many other people, don't despair too much about this, the effects that it can have on the local community can be positive and as well as negative in terms of the effect. But my question is, bearing in mind that that industry is likely in decline, what specific measures would you suggest, were you to be elected and put back, either back in or as new candidates, to diversify our economy? And could I get you to be specific about your ideas and not just be general about supporting what we've got? But perhaps within your answer, you could perhaps touch on the fact that we've got an industry, the tourism industry, where we've got a quango that wants to spend £42 million dressing up the airport in what I believe is empire building, when in fact they should be encouraging growth of the tourism industry by maybe using the power they've got to reduce the cost of getting to the island rather than producing an international airport.
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you. And one more question, the lady again towards the front, and we'll go to the back next time.
My name's Jackie Radcliffe, and I live in Belmont Gardens. I have a quick question, but a quick observation. Coming here this evening, I was fully expecting to hear from candidates from the Reform Party, but I'm a little surprised to realise there's another party here, the Lubby, Wickenden, Martin Party. I was under the impression that these candidates were independent candidates, so I'm a little bit surprised that it feels like they're a bit of a trio this evening. My question is concerning the hospital. Do the candidates consider that the debate over where to position the new hospital is over? And in the light of that, their answer to that, where would they have wanted or would want the new hospital to be built?
Okay, thank you. But your question's about the hospital, not about political parties. Okay. Okay, we'll start with Jan.
If I can just answer Jackie first. I don't think the debate's over with the new hospital. The moment we get a new States Assembly, I'm more than certain that at least one member will bring back a proposition to re-looking at the sites. At the end of the day, they haven't had the inspectors for the site that they're currently preferred, so it is more than viable for it to go back to the table, and I personally would like to see the waterfront. I think that the public have paid for the waterfront site, and I think it would be a better use to use that site rather than putting luxury apartments there. As for what measures to diversify the economy, I don't actually agree with your statement that finance is just going to go away. Even with this debate that we've seen over registers of beneficial ownership, the chances are that finance will still say here they still get a very, very good deal here. But as for diversifying the economy, I think we need to go along the lines of which is an absolute necessity in Jersey. We need to go along the lines of looking at what we can do to currently improve the digital industry that we have here, which currently, despite all the quangos and the nice presentations and the nice soft words, it's not being supported. Currently, the people who are going to go into that industry are being taught in porta cabins. So what I would like to see is, I can't give you any more industries as to off the bat, because if I did, I think I'd be a bit minted if I could just think of new industries off the bat. But I would personally like to see a concentration more in media in Jersey. Currently, the technology to create media is it's more and more effective to create media and media products. So I think that is something that we should be looking at more in Jersey.
Thank you, Jan. John?
Yeah, with the the finance industry one, yeah, we dodged the bullet there this time, but next time, we won't be so lucky. And that will probably become the industry standard, so that's going to have a contracting effect on the finance industry then anyway. So we're going to be looking at a much smaller finance industry going forward, and plus with automation and the march of technology, we really, really have to think seriously about how we're going to diversify and what industries can actually give us a sustainable return. Now, we've got digital, obviously, and we've got to be upfront with that, and we've got to be awake to new testbed technologies and make sure that we're providing the good frameworks and infrastructure that they can operate in, and we've got a good digital skills agenda in the schools to get our kids competing at the highest levels. But also we should be looking at a University of Jersey perhaps would bring in great amounts of revenue. I'm thinking we could convert the Fort Region into halls of residence. That would sort of give us a little bit of leeway on, on the cramming issue. Hemp. We've got the new hemp farm now. This is some sort of wonder plant. It's absolutely amazing. The amount of things that it can do. It's a great health food. You can use it to build houses with. You can. It's absolute, and it's actually. It's good for the soil. It puts nitrogen back into the soil, so it's a win-win-win with hemp. And then that feeds into the larger question of should we legalize cannabis, which could be an absolute goldmine for this island. Should that come about? If you think about the boost that would provide to tourism and to agriculture, we already have the expertise. We already have the We already have the growing expertise, so we should get on with it. Get on with it.
Scott.
Thank you. I'm going to start with your question, Jackie. I don't think the debate at the hospital is over, but I do think we need to start from the right place. When we build a hospital here, once we've got past all of the red tape and everything that we're going through, we will have a modern, fit-for-purpose hospital that's going to support and save people's lives, and that's what we've got to keep in our minds. I supported the Constable of St John in re-evaluating what the sites look like. I was surprised at many people that weren't there for the vote at the end of the day, but I think it's important that we haven't explained, or it hasn't been explained to the people of Jersey where the sites fell down, and I think we need to do more about letting people know what that is. But we need to keep in our minds that we do need a new fit-for-purpose and modern hospital to support islanders and their children and their children's children going to the future. John, firstly, I don't think we dodged a bullet right now in the House of Commons. I think that we've had some amazing people going over to Westminster and doing some fantastic work. I think that London should be looking at themselves well before they start looking at places like Jersey that's leading the way. London has some of the worst anti-money laundering and checks and balances of any offshore jurisdiction, and they are an offshore jurisdiction for other people, and I think they should be aware of that a lot more. But the senators that went over and dealt with ministers and lords and MPs in the UK have done a sterling job, and they should be very much congratulated for what they've done in the last couple of days to get us in that safety net where we are today. Diverse economy, I've constantly been working for my last 3.5 years with Digital Jersey, reskilling people. We've had over 60 people reskilled into digital sectors, and most of them have been from very low-paid jobs to starting their own businesses and employing other people that have been reskilled. We need to continue that work. We've got a great digital network. We've got the fastest fibre broadband in most of the world. I mean, we are really up there somewhere high for speeds. We've got 3 4G networks, and I'll stop there.
Okay. Kelly.
Well, John, I'll answer your question first. It's no secret that the finance industry is the #1 employer in Jersey. And with Brexit looming, we do need to have a look at the finance industry. The banking sector does look like it's going to decrease, as the fund sector will increase. And Reform Jersey will actually commit to increasing the promotion budget year on year over the next 4 years, so that Jersey gets the global recognition that it deserves for this sector. What I can say is that when it comes to new industries, I absolutely love how fast technology is moving. As a sole business owner myself, and as somebody who is looking to set up a local gaming convention and pop culture convention, I think that gaming should be looked at over here as a new industry. I know it's sort of an extremely new industry, and something that the UK is sort of forefronting on and Silicon Valley is forefronting on. But we have a lot of e-gaming companies over here. Why haven't we looked at that a little bit more? Technology itself, that needs to be looked at as well. So like, as I said at the Chamber Connection event on Monday, technology is moving very, very quickly, and Jersey seems to be standing still. So that is one thing that we do need to get our foot on in the door with, and we do need to have a look at. Jackie, in relation to the hospital, the debate isn't over, in my opinion. Not all potential sites were fully reviewed. The Gleeds reports suggested that the waterfront was the best site for it. But however, myself and Reform Jersey, we generally support having the hospital in town, where little disruption can be caused. However, I support having sort of extended services at the Overdale site. But however, when it comes to emergency services and services that can assist the emergency services, I believe that the current site is the best site at the present moment in time. However, I do believe the debate isn't over, and there is still more talks to be ongoing, and I will assist in any of those talks. Thank you.
John, I don't think the finance industry is in decline, and I don't think we should wish it away. There's a lot of good people, brilliant people that work in our finance industry. A lot of them are from Jersey, and I think we should support them. I think the worst thing that we could possibly do is give the government the opportunity to start thinking of great business ideas. What we should do is make the environment right for entrepreneurs and people with good ideas to progress, to grow. Give them tax breaks. Freeze their social security contributions for a couple of years, first years. The Innovation Fund was a good idea, run badly. It should be run a bit more like Dragon's Den, with real entrepreneurs and the island investing in these businesses and possibly getting a return. I think there should be a new tech college that the digital guy has been calling for, and he wants 3,000 square meters. That's 2 floors of one of the new, shiny new buildings on the Esplanade. I would start it off in give them 2 floors. Let the finance industry give something back. Let's make sure we are educating and skilling our young people so that they can fill the roles in the finance industry and other industries. There's so much to say in so little time. The question, Jackie, I hope we're not scaring you by saying that we are working together. It has been done in Jersey quite a lot of times where candidates, independent candidates, have stood together on a platform for election. Ralph Fiber and John Lamarck did it in the 70s and 80s. I don't think the hospital thing is over. I've lost faith in the process because of the dreadful first plans they came out with for that hospital. So it's knocked my confidence. Chris Taylor was right. We should have a short, sharp, independent review of the process just through the summer months, and I would vote for that on the first day of the next Assembly, because I want an independent assessment, a quick one, not an expensive one, to know, and I want to listen to people working in the health service. They've been gagged. I think that's wrong.
In the 19th century, Britain was known as the workshop of the world, but now it relies on what remains of its 500 years of empire, and finance dominates the British economy, and that's a major problem, not just for Britain, but also for this island as well. This island is captured economically and politically by the interests of finance, and diversification is very difficult because it's the cuckoo in the nest. How can you compete with an international bank or a trust company which is making vast profits? But we do need to think of something. But I'm concerned that that's going to be very difficult. And we're going to be dealing now with the end times, when times become a lot more difficult and the contradictions become even more acute. I'm going to take a liberty, Jackie, in answering your question about the hospital. Not that I'm indifferent to it, but I'm going to talk about what you first raised, which is about political parties. The fact that our 3 deputies are aligning together. In fact, it's not a trio, it's a gang of 4, in fact, because Tracy Valois is their leader, apparently, and going to be Chief Minister. They're worried. They're very frightened by the existence of reform. In fact, the establishment is worried about the existence of reform, because it's the first time since 1948 there has been an organised group that is prepared to challenge the establishment. In 1948 they lost. We don't know what's going to happen this time, but you still need strong people to fight for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Judy?
Thank you, and that is why I'm working with Deputy Russell Labby in Wickenden, because I found that we have 3 strong people. But to answer your question, Jackie, about the hospital, if you read my manifesto, you will see I think it's in the wrong place. I've said it should be the waterfront. I've said that all along. I was Assistant Minister at Health in 2012 when they first said we really have to look at, we're going to just keep patching up the hospital, or do we need a new one? And it was mooted, a new site or redevelop on the current site. And the people around the table, and some of them were the medical staff, some were the managers, top managers, said the worst site will be trying to build a new hospital around this hospital where people are trying to get better. And then where we are today. Now, they think I've forgotten I heard this, and I didn't only hear it once. And it went from, as we all know now, the secret 20-odd sites, Warwick Farm. The waterfront was the best, but the finance of the waterfront was that we have to have the big finance offices, but there was still room for the hospital then, and there is still room. They said we might have to move or get rid of Pizza Hut and KFC to move it that way. Well, if you got rid of them, you probably wouldn't need as much a hospital because people wouldn't be going. A healthier lifestyle. And Mr. Baker, quickly, I think you were also hinting about the airport and why we're spending money, but then you also said we should be bringing low-cost airlines in and more people for tourism. If we don't address the problem with the airport, it really is to the point. We were at construction weeks ago and they said that should have been done about 12 years ago, and we could have spent a lot less on it. Now they've let it fall down like they do all the time, so we need it, and otherwise we won't even be able to get on and off the island. It is a safety issue. Thank you.
Well, Jackie, looking at the hospital site, I'm an ex-fireman amongst other things, and looking at the concept of having the whole hospital on one site, it's all eggs in one basket. You have a disaster and you've got one building, whereas developing more on the Ovedale, I think would be better, because then you're splitting some of the resources into 2 different sites. The Newgate Street area could be redeveloped. The physiotherapy, the Gwynedd Unit Wing, that's all single story, so it could be redeveloped. There's already been construction works going along with the hospital being operational, so that's not really a big issue. Works can happen on a separate site. It's a case of the big problem that has been seen through the media is the sheer size of it. Just a little comment on the two parties that are up here. Everybody else on this panel is either part of a party or they're part of incumbents or they've served before. So I have to identify that I am actually the only new independent candidate that actually lives in this district. Looking at the situation with the airport, harbours and airport have been privatised, as so many other things of our utilities have. I actually disagree with the privatisation because they're our services. They shouldn't be making profits on utility services. With finance, yes, there is a bit of a challenge on there at the moment, but on Monday I've just signed a pledge with the sport and recreation situation to be putting more effort in sport, leisure and recreation. And I think by combining tourism, sport, leisure, recreation, the whole lot, we could actually bring back one of our finest assets of this island, which is the island itself.
Thank you. Okay. Okay. Yeah, we will try and keep it to one question each. We had a very interesting subsidiary question, so to speak, last time round. Who would like to ask from this side? The gentleman at the back, or the lady at the back first, and then we'll... Sorry about that, we'll come. Yeah.
Hello, I'm Barbara Corbett. I live in Lamott Street. What do the candidates feel in relation to divorce reform?
Sorry? Oh, divorce. Sorry, that was about divorce reform, eh? Yeah, thank you. And we'll take one from this side. Don't be shy. The gentleman there.
I'm Colin Person. I'm asking about the coastline being sold for £22,500 and how will public access be ensured?
Sorry, can you repeat that question?
The states of Jersey have sold the Queen's Gift for £22,500. It was the Jersey's coastline. To Jersey Development Holdings, I think, was involved.
Okay. The panelists, or some of the panelists, saying that they had the question last time, presumably at the Oamaru.
Well, the thing is that they said that they didn't know, so I thought maybe in the few days since then they might have found some answers if they'd have done a bit of research or something like that.
Yeah. Sorry?
What? To answer it. It's not true. I've spoken to Jersey Development, Lee Henry, he knows nothing about it, and he would love to find a property for 22,000. And really that's all I can tell you. I emailed him after last Hustings. So it's not true. But if you could bring the supplement in, he'd love to see it, so would I.
All right, okay.
So what the panel is saying is they were asked the question last time, and I'm sure the gentleman asked in good faith, but apparently it's not true, the figure that was quoted, so we can't base it. It's not happened, so we can't proceed. So have you got another question you'd like to ask?
I'm afraid not.
No, okay. Thanks a lot. Can we try another question on this side? If not, we'll move over to the gentleman there who's been pushing, and rightly.
Hello, I'm Mr. Goslar. Just wanted to ask the candidates, if they're elected, will they try to raise the following injustice that's in the actively seeking work regulations of income support for the last decade, which means that people can be sanctioned for not actively seeking work, even if they are, by any reasonable standard, actually making a good effort to find work. The example I give, which is a real example, is someone who was sanctioned a few years ago, and The right of appeal is only on, basically an appointment was missed, and you have a right of appeal on that only. And in the same week, that person had taken 4 other steps, succeeded taking 4 other steps to find work, which in the UK would be enough to class them as actively seeking work. It came to the tribunal, and this appellant tried to raise the fact that they had made 4 positive efforts to find work. They'd been to an interview, they'd applied for 2 jobs, and they'd been to another meeting at the job centre. So 4 things they did, 1 thing they didn't do, but the right of appeal was only on what they didn't do, what they failed to do. And all the positive things that the job seeker did falls away. The tribunal ignored what the job seeker had done to find work and upheld the sanction, even though under UK law they would have been classed as actively seeking work. And this is because of the legislation in the income support regulations, which has never been the subject of any discussion.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gosling. So the question seems to be, would the panel agree to a review, or indeed push for reform, of the way in which the out-of-work sanction process is currently operating? So we've got 2 questions, and I think John starts on this occasion.
Yeah, I'll start with the second one first. Income support, yeah, it does need serious reform and review, both of which we're committed to doing. You know, support needs to be properly targeted, and it needs to be consistent with long-term users to be dealt with. What I mean by that is the users need to have a consistency with their handlers, or whatever you want to call them, like, you know? Because often the sanction regime exacerbates existing problems, sending, you know, making their poverty even worse, and sending people into sort of a spiral of despair, which doesn't serve anybody's interests. As for the second question, divorce reform, well, we've had marriage reform, we've got equal marriage now, so why not have divorce reform? I'm not actually sure what it means. I've never been married or divorced, so yeah, whatever the issue is, I'm sure it's reformable.
Okay, thank you. Scott?
Thanks. Thank you for your questions. Mr. Goslar, I think out-of-work benefits is a support system that's to help people in times when they're down, but it's not a lifestyle choice. So there has to be some way to make sure that it's there for its particular purpose. Now, without anything like sanctions, it's very hard to support it, and I don't think anyone wants continually somebody not to be working and just being paid for it. That's not a lifestyle choice that we want or anyone wants their taxes on. I think this should be on a case-by-case scenario, Mr. Gosling. I think that it shouldn't be a blanket sanctions. I think it should be done more humanely to the individual cases of, because everyone's different and everyone's situation's different. So I would hope that it was done on a case-based scenario, and of course it might not always go the right way, and mistakes will be made. Everyone's human, and I'm sorry for the case that you've laid out to us today, that things haven't gone in the best possible way, but I do stand by the fact that you need something. It's not a lifestyle choice for out-of-work benefits. Divorce reform. Again, I honestly don't know what divorce reform. I guess some changes have been made recently that you can be divorced if you've been separated for 2 years. I would say I'd have to look at it. I'm not quite sure what specifics you're after in the way that you're asking about divorce reform, so I can't answer any better than that, sorry.
So, Mr. Goslan, obviously it's a very detailed scenario that you have given us, so thank you very much for sharing that information with us. Since income support replaced parish welfare a decade ago, there's actually been no full-scale review into this to ensure that it's being targeted by those who actually need it. What I and my other Reform Jersey colleagues do is we do support a full-scale review with the objective of making the benefits system more user-friendly so that the vulnerable people who need help can actually receive it. What I would like to do as well is that if you are able to, I would like to sit down with you after this and discuss your situation to make sure that if it does happen again, it doesn't happen again, if that makes sense. So if you would be willing to stay after this, I would love to take your details. I didn't actually catch your name, who was speaking about the divorce reform. I'm so sorry the mic didn't pick up your name. Obviously, Reform Jersey has assisted with marriage reform, so equal marriage. I am not sure what divorce reform is actually in relation to. I imagine that it would need to be dealt with on a case-by-case basis. But what I would like to do as well with yourself is sit down and have a coffee with you, learn more about this. I don't assume to know everything. I work with a team in Reform Jersey. We don't assume to know everything as individuals. And if none of us know everything, then one of us will love to sit down with you and know more about it. So as the same with Mr. Goslan, if you would be willing to stick around afterwards, I would love to speak more with you and know how we can help you further if we do get elected in. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Russell?
Well, obviously I don't know where you stand on divorce reform, but let me tell you where I do. Divorce should be as easy as possible. Governments tend to like to keep people married because that's one house, and when they split up, that's two houses, and it puts a strain on housing. I think even the reforms that have come in or are coming in are still dodgy for me. They're still pointing people towards a statutory term of mediation. Look, if two people hate one another and want to live apart, don't keep them together. It's unhealthy, especially if they've got children. So I would say that divorce reform needs to make divorces as easy as possible and as painless as possible for everybody so that we can all be grown-ups and agree to disagree and agree to part. Mr. Goslar, you've obviously had a tough time. I can tell by your demeanour, and I'm sorry for that, because I remember your questions from 3.5 years ago when we were here in this hall, and you were very feisty, and you gave me a hard time, and you've given me a break, actually, over the last 3.5 years, and I'm grateful to you. So I'm sorry about your individual circumstances. I don't have the answer to your question. I know that there's an actuarial valuation being done of the whole social security system. There's so many unfairnesses, inequalities, inequities in it. You know, self-employed people paying social security contributions as an employer of themselves and as an employee of themselves is ludicrous. And also, you know, you can work a 20-hour week and still be classed into the social security system as seeking work, because they have this arbitrary figure of it having to be 35 hours a week. It makes nonsense, and it's rubbish to family-friendly working practices as well. So there is a lot of reform that has to be done on social security. I wish you all the best, Mr. Goslar.
Thank you. Nick?
Divorce reform. There are very few advocates or qualified lawyers in the States Assembly. That wasn't so in the past, because it is a legislature which is looking at law, but very few are there to actually properly scrutinise what goes through. With divorce reform, there is a need for the modernisation and updating of lots of areas of legislation that relate to social affairs. It's not priority for this government because financial matters come first, unfortunately. And also another thing we're going to see is a reduction in the eligibility for legal aid next year. You will not be able to get it. The household income has now, eligibility has fallen, so it's going to be a lot more difficult. About Mr. Goslin's question, yes, the social security system is very bureaucratic and it can be extremely arbitrary. Those sanctions, I think, are unnecessary. often what happens is it forces those who are seeking work to go out to an interview with an employer where both parties don't really want to look at each other. The employer may want to take labour, but that employee is not really interested because that's not what they want. What's required is a reskilling of the workforce. The unemployed need to be given those skills that will get them back into work so they don't have to accept those jobs which are basically around the minimum wage, which, by the way, we need to be looking at that living wage around about £10. But as I said, the best way to achieve that is for workers to organise, get into trade unions and demand from their employers higher wages.
Judy?
Thank you. Divorce reform. We looked at some when we bought the new marriage law, and it was sort of rushed because it was in with the marriage law, and this is our divorce laws seem to me to be way behind the UK, and I feel like I think Russell Labby said. Look, if you've got two people who really can't stand each other and they've got no children or an assets, they should be. Years and years ago in the UK, you could get a divorce for £16. It was sort of 3 times said, I divorce you, and as long as you paid your £16, you could do it. That's 35 years ago. So we are not there. But I do think our divorce law needs to make children the centre of what is going on. We need to be much more, have much more in the family courts to find out that, you know, they are seeing both parents and things like that, and rights, and children's rights, actually. As to the sanctions, this has been to the Assembly twice. Once it went and it was just going to be sanctions, and then it was never going to be completely stopped, and then that didn't work, so they brought it back. Both times I voted against it, because I tell you what they do here, they include the whole family. So I was worried that it could be one of the parents not actively seeking work, and the children would be suffering. So it has been looked at. It needs looking at again, and there is a big social security review going on, but it was 8 votes against both times out of 49. So it's going to be an uphill struggle. Thank you.
Jason?
Thank you. Well, Mr. Goslan, we had a chat last time at the OMRU. I know you're in a very tight situation at the moment. I can understand that. My opinion on the Social Security income support system is it's diabolical. It's up and down like a yo-yo. You end up getting right on the cliff edge. As soon as you get a job, the income support ceases, which, quite frankly, I think in order to get people back into steady work, there should be an overlap. So there's still income support coming in to allow that transition between receiving benefit and earning your own income in a job. Looking at the situation in the UK law, well, as a Jerseyman, I have to say this is Jersey, and UK law doesn't really have a place over here. We have to make our own laws, we have to make our own stand. It actually goes back to the financial question that John said earlier about the UK. We cannot be ruled by the UK. We have to make our own laws. So that's on that side. Now, still on law, it's Barbara on the divorce law. Unfortunately, I've never had the fortune to be married, so I don't know about the marriage side or the divorce side. But I am aware that especially for a woman, and this is where certain equality issues come into being, there are challenges whereby the woman has to have permission from the husband to get a divorce. Well, you know, relationships in the 21st century do not accept that. That's not the way to go. We should have a situation whereby if the relationship breaks down, we have a sensible, controlled and moderated manner to come out of it without putting either party in difficulty. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
To the lady in the back, sorry, I didn't get your name at the time, but unfortunately, I don't know enough about this to comment on it. I'm incredibly sorry. As for use, I think it's Mr. Gosman. Yeah. I'm not going to comment on personal circumstances purely because I don't know enough about your personal circumstances to comment on it. What I can say is that since the inception of Social Security in 2008, there's been no review of it. We need to urgently have review to see its effectiveness. The sanctions that were brought in were a short-sighted, mean spirit, just a disgusting approach to trying to cut 10 million quid out of the budget. I've been affected by sanctions, and I can tell you my personal experiences. I ended up very mentally ill and had to leave my job, and I got my sanctions cut for 9 weeks. It's when you're at the bottom of the pit, when there is no light for you, then you've got some bureaucrat at Social Security telling you, oh well, tough. You've left your job, you've tried to get yourself out of a situation that was making your condition worse. You should be punished for it. I don't think that people who are on Social Security or people who leave their jobs, I don't believe it is a lifestyle choice whatsoever.
Okay, we'll take more questions. Sorry? Yeah. The lady in the front. Yes. Thought she was leaving.
Hi, my name's Layla. What would you do to stop voter apathy and improve turnout in future elections?
Okay, thank you. Scott, voter apathy and turnout.
I've got to say, it's probably very difficult to enforce voter apathy. It's up to everyone to make their own decision whether they feel that they want to put their vote forward, whether they feel that they want change. Do they have enough representation of the people on this table here saying the things that they want to hear and the changes they want? I don't think, like Australia, where you find people who don't vote is good. I think everyone has to have their own choice. I'm hoping, from what I'm seeing on door-to-door while we're going around, is there is a higher level of engagement this election. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a 20% increase in the voter turnout this time, which will be fantastic. People are much more engaged about what's going on, but I don't think there's anything you can do to force it. Everyone has their own lives and their own choices, and it's up to them. Thanks.
Layla, thank you so much for your question. Voter apathy is a major issue that we have. Like I said in my opening speech, only 29% of St Helier residents came out to vote last time. I think Reform Jersey have a great way of socialising with the voters on social media. I think utilising social media to our advantage gets the young voters out, which is where most of the voter apathy is. A lot of the young voters at the moment sort of think their voices aren't being heard in the States, and that needs to change. I praise Vote.je and Love Theatre for putting the play out in the schools at the moment. That was an absolutely great incentive. But I think it is a choice. It is a lifestyle choice. And also at the same time, you need the right candidates to choose from. So people need to make sure that they are choosing the right individual to represent them in the States. And I think that we do have a great choice up here today. And if you do vote for Reform Jersey, then you do have a voice in the States. You will have a voice in the States. So thank you so much.
Okay, Russell.
Well, you know, I'm not so keen on the so-called reforms that have happened so far over the last half dozen years with our system. I mean, this was supposed to be a general election, and yet 10 constables are in, and some deputies are back in, so it's not really a general election, isn't it? Because it's, you know, almost a third or quarter of the Assembly are back in, and we know who they are, and I think it's a huge disincentive for people, especially as they've seen the constables really have held the balance of power. There's been the executive, the government, there's been reform, those of us who've been fighting the government, and a block of 8 or 9 constables who really are the ones you've had to win over if you want to win a debate. They've held the balance of power, and yet they don't get elected. So that is a massive turn-off, I feel.
Right. Apathy is not the correct word. A better expression is sullen disillusionment, anger, frustration. The working class doesn't vote in this district. The working class in Jersey doesn't vote, but it's angry. And its anger, unfortunately, instead of turning into action, turns inward, into not voting, into not registering. 70% of this district does not vote. It's not because they're stupid. They know there's elections going on, but they don't have politicians who are actually going to represent them, who are going to fight for their social and economic interests, who do the things that are necessary. I see Deputy Southern sitting at the back there. He's achieved a few things. We've got some little practical things, like we've got pre-poll, we've got vote.je, we've got the supplementary roll. We can actually get people on to actually get out there and vote. But the problem is a political one. If you don't represent the working class and you're not going to fight for them, you're not going to get their votes.
Okay. Judy?
Thank you. Well, I totally disagree with what Mr. Lacornu has just said. If you've got angry, passionate people and you have a vote and you have a voice, you go out and vote. And I'm sorry, other than that, people, I would be actually quite in favour of the Australian way. But people have said to me, as long as there's something on the bottom that says none of the above, and that's fine, that's fair, they've come out, they've done their duty. People have died over the years to get people, everyone's got the right to vote now. I've had my children voting since they've been old enough. When they first vote, I might have to give them a nudge which way to vote. Now I can't tell them and I wouldn't want to. But you've got to get them there early. We should be educating children more, but people should vote. It's so especially women. I have women on the doorstep, oh, I don't vote. And I say, 100 years ago this year, you couldn't vote. And in Jersey, it was only about 60 years ago. Oh, yes, Jersey was well behind. Thank you.
Jason?
Well, how do you get people to vote? Simple, firing squad. Really, Leila, the apathy in voting, look in the Australian system, they've got it compulsory. It's, I don't agree with that. That's an infringement of a person's liberty. It's something that basically we all have the choice, we all have the freedom now to choose to vote. It's a case you can either vote for one of your representatives, or you can spoil your paper to put a vote against it, but you've still got the right to vote. I wouldn't go down the lines of having forced voting, because it's just not the right way to go. In fact, as Judy has just identified, that yes, we have got everybody who's eligible to vote has the right to vote. But there are some people in the community, because of their religious beliefs and other reasons, that they do not want to vote or they can't vote. So that's where apathy has got to stop, basically.
Thank you. Jan?
Turnout in the district last election was only 27%. That's not, unfortunately, that's not really a mandate. That's not democracy. That's just a few people who actually bother to engage, actually making decisions for anyone else. How we engage people is that we need to give the public options to actually vote for. The state of politics in Jersey have, for the last since 1949, I think it is, has just been a bunch of independents, random people saying random things. There's no policies, clear, coherent choices, and because there's no actual policies or no actual brands and no people nailing their politics to the mast, you have a situation where politicians are able to do whatever the hell they want, and they can tell you something completely different come election time. Hence why we have a situation where it was last year, one of your sitting deputies actually voted against the reforms to restructure the states to give you more representation in the states, here in St Helier, more representation in the states.
Okay. John?
Yeah, well, voter apathy comes about by having a deliberately opaque, complicated system that's set up to keep people confused, disinterested, and it feeds into the perception that, you know, the system is rigged. And it is. It's completely rigged. You know, we have unelected constables, we haven't even got separation of powers, unequal constituencies. It's a complete farce. You know, we're in desperate need of electoral reform. We've had Clothier, we've had Carswell, we've even had the independent care inquiry, still nothing. The way to remedy it is through education and simplifying the system. But most of all is giving people something to vote for. And that's where Reform Jersey comes in. Because our manifesto is inspiring people right across this island. And hopefully that will be evident on May the 16th.
I think we only had one question then because there was only one question. And there's one more hand up, and that will be the last question, okay? And then we'll go to the summaries. So we'll take that gentleman. Sorry. Yeah, it's a minute answer. Thank you. Garant beat me to that.
Thank you. Hello. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. As part of my interviewing skills, I always ended off by asking, I'm sure you're going to get the job, but if you don't get the job, and it's a loaded question, if you don't get the job, what will you do to earn a living if you do not get into the States on this occasion, please?
Sorry, can you repeat your name again?
Yes, John Brissett. John Brissett.
John Brissett. Okay, if you don't get the job, what will you do for a living? And I think we start with Kelly.
John, thank you so much for that question. Apologies for my mic. I have a full-time job that I work right now. I'm a senior compliance administrator. I will continue that job and I will continue along that career path. However, in 4 years' time, when the elections do come back up, I am looking at running again if I do not get in, because I don't think that running for deputy one time, if you don't get in, you just throw in the towel. I think being politically motivated and being politically minded is a lifestyle choice. It's something that you need to constantly try to do. And as one of your deputy candidates, I want to urge you that if any of my candidates don't get in this election, that they should review it, doing it in the next 4 years, because it's something that you need to choose to do as a lifestyle choice, not as a one-off decision. Thank you.
I would go back to doing what I did before I was elected. So I would I do quite a lot of writing, I do a lot of script doctoring or script editing, I direct in the theatre, so I would continue to do that. And if nobody wanted, I'd have to pick spuds on my brother's farm, I suppose.
Mine. I see being elected as giving me an important new platform on to do what I do all the time, which is fight for the interests of working people. I represent workers in the employment tribunal for nothing, because I feel that's socially just, and I will carry on fighting even if not elected. I will be doing things in the next 4 years, but give me that opportunity. Let me do it in the best gentleman's club, and we might get some change. Yes, so I don't think it's going to make any difference, but it will make a difference to you if I'm there. To me, it won't make much difference because I'm just going to do exactly the same thing, carry on fighting.
Judy?
What would I do? I've been doing this for 18 years. I was doing a range of different jobs before. I've worked in accounts, I've done part-time jobs, I've waitressed at the Royal Jersey Golf Club. I would probably go back into office work, but I've always promised my constable that I would become an honorary in St Helier. I just think it's a fantastic, interesting job. And obviously you're not paid for that, but I do my day job and do a bit of that. And there will be life after May the 16th. Thank you.
Jason?
I've spoken about the whole concept of balance of policies. regardless of whether I get in or not, then I'll be doing exactly the same thing as I'm doing now. It just works out to how much balance do I do. I have my own small business. I run a small excavation, demolition and construction company. And with that, it's a case I'm used to moving the earth, as I said earlier. But it's a case of, do you want me to move your world? Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
I'll probably stay in education, pursue my degree in sociology, pursue a career in the social sciences, and then get ready to fight again in 4 years' time.
John?
Yeah, I mean, I still have my job in health. I'm on annual leave at the moment, believe it or not. So I would go back to working for the Learning Disability Service, a job that I love. But I'd still be politically active. I'm an activist. I'm a trade unionist for the Jersey Nursing Association. So we're active in fighting the cause of the way nurses are treated on this island, which is appalling. You know, political activism is more of a compunction rather than a choice. You know, injustice is a very motivating factor, so there's always loads to do to fight it. So I'll still be busy politically, no doubt about that.
Okay. Scott.
John, thank you for the question. I had a very similar, well, I had a question that I used to ask when I used to interview people as well, and it was always, in the world of Warner Brothers, there's a company called Acme, and you can order anything, any device that would do any amazing thing in the world. Right now, if you were to order a device, what would it do? And that would normally give me an idea about what somebody's passion is right now and what they're really most concerned about. A very random question gets them off their feet. Now, I used to work in the finance industry before I got elected for over 15 years. I've run an IT company in the UK. I've been a consultant. I would go back into the IT consultancy trade if I didn't get elected this time round. Thanks, John.
Okay, thank you. And that'll be the last question. Now, the last item on the agenda is that the candidates will speak for a minute. And I was, sorry, I think because you're next in line, Kelly, would you mind kicking off?
She kicked off the last time. Kick off.
Oh, you kicked off. It'll be Russell then. Okay, well, if Russell, do you want to get your thoughts together or can you jump straight in? Okay, jump straight in.
I'm not going to summarise. I'm going to introduce a new topic that I wanted to this evening. It's Fort Regent. It can't be left as it is. And I am sick and tired of being told there's no money for Fort Regent. I can find some money. There's £32 million that Alan McLean stashed away in his biscuit tin from revenues of last year. There's the chance to sell off maybe 25% of shares of JT worth valued at 200 million, so that's 50 million. We'll have some of that. And there's 7 or 11 million coming down the line from building the first building on the Esplanade. And the waterfront should pay for Fort Regent. I would set up an old-fashioned trading committee, public, private, people who know about conferences, people who know about leisure facilities, because government is not very good at running buildings like Fort Regent. So I am waving the flag for Fort Regent, and I hope in the next 4 years of this government we can start and get some action, because it shouldn't be, as it is now, a waste of potential space and a waste of money. Thank you for listening tonight, and thank you for coming.
Nick?
The bad news is that the government is already formed. I told you that. The policies will remain unchanged. They're going to press hard upon you. You're going to be paying for their crisis. I will not be accepting any ministerial positions in a government of the rich. I will not be accepting any deputy ministerial positions in the government of the rich. And I hope that Reform, if it gets any candidates in, will not do that. Because what we need is a really tough, strong opposition that is going to fight for the interest of working people, pensioners, and the underprivileged in this island. To do that, you need strong individuals who are prepared and have the track record of being prepared to challenge power, because that's what it's all about. A lot of these people here will just roll over and have their tummy tickled. That is not me. I'm a fighter. I'm a lawyer. I will fight for you. Thank you.
Judy?
Thank you, and thank you for all coming tonight. I really do get angry when I'm accused of being a rollover and having my tummy tickled for the last 18 years, because I have been fighting. You can't do it on your own. You do sometimes have to take people with you. And even if 18 members of Reform do get in, they can't work on their own. You have to get people to work with you. And this goes back to why I am working with Deputy Wickham and Labby. Only the first 3 years I was elected, I had Paul Routier and Jerry Doria, and they were a great team. Where was my team as some #1 deputies when they wanted the police station? I was the only one who was stood there getting petitions on my own because the other deputies wouldn't work with me. And I've had this time and time again. So Mr. Lecornu doesn't like it that we are working together because he's frightened that we are working together. And we're working for you, and we will carry on. Thank you.
Well, thank you. We're now in a situation of having a new choice of what we want to do. We've got a choice of voting in the incumbents that have already been in there that, quite frankly, I think are stale. They've gone beyond their sell-by date. Or we've got reform. And I don't really follow the reform of the government the way that the party are going. I think they're too far left, the incumbents are too far right. My policies are about balance, about the centre ground, about bringing in things that are realistic to what we want as a populace. I am independent, and I intend to stay independent. I intend to put a more personal voice for you, the people of our district. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, my party is, 1 minute we're the big, evil, business, capitalist, finance party, and the next minute we're the communists. I think it just shows how much we've grasped the centre ground in Jersey politics. For the first time in a generation, you have a clear, coherent choice. You can either vote for continuity and complicity, or you can vote for change. Me and every other Reform Jersey candidate represents change. You can't achieve things on your own. This is why you need representatives that have joint policies, joint vision that is out there in the public in black and white for you to decide who do you think is going to work best together to achieve things for you. Thank you.
Well, Einstein said, you can't keep doing the same thing over and over and expect a different result. Ladies and gentlemen, the legacy of this government is clear for all to see, and we should hold them to account for it. That legacy is the era of food banks and poverty, and the massive polarisation of our community. This has happened on their watch. We must do better, and we can do better. We have the ideas, the political will, and the blueprint for a future that works for every single one of us. We believe in it, and we want you to believe in it. Things can change, and they will change for the better. So put your faith in the future, put your faith in us, and vote for Reform Jersey on the 16th of May.
Thank you.
Well, I think that's the first time I've ever heard Deputy Labby and Deputy Martin referred to as stale, because if you've seen them tonight, that's definitely not what they are. In business, I always lived with one mantra, which was surround yourself with the hardest working and the brightest people you can find. And I was very lucky when getting re-elected that I had Judy Martin and Russell Labby with me. They are extremely clever, they're extremely hard-working, and that means that they're working for you. So I don't apologise for us working together, because we've worked together very well from the very start. As I said, I'll finish where I started. We're losing a lot of experience in this current assembly, and we need more than ever politicians that experience willing to step up and take responsibility to make the hard decisions. And I hope you believe that myself, Deputy Labby and Deputy Martin have been that for you, and we will continue to be for that for you.
Thank you. Kelly.
Well, I did have a closing speech all written out, but I thought it'd be better to speak from the heart for this one. You're why we're here. You are why we are all sitting here. We want to represent you in the States. We need to stop fighting. So many people today have referred to being in the States as fighting the good fight, fighting against people. We need to stop fighting. We need to work together. That's what we need to do. We need to stop fighting against each other, stop this infighting, and work as a team. And that's exactly what Reform are going to do. Reform's policies are all carefully costed, they are researched, and I don't claim to know all of the answers, but the great thing is that I'll work with people that do. And I will work together with those people that know those answers. What I will just leave you with is this last quote again that I started with. There is nothing wrong with change if it is in the right direction. Reform is the right direction. I will tell you that now. I have never worked better with a team as I have with Reform. And I will say this now. Any single one of us will all work together for you. Please come out and vote for us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the candidates. They've very much stepped up to the podium. Whether they've been without hesitation, divergence and deviation will be judged by people elsewhere. But thank you. You've all been assertive, you've all been clear, and you've all stayed within the time limits. So that's been excellent. I'd like to thank the timer, Garant. Excellent work. I'd like to thank the lady. Sorry? Mandy. I'd like to thank Mandy, who stepped up again as a late volunteer with the microphone. Thank you very much. And the parish of St Helier for accommodating us.